It's Kurma, and I'll be speaking to you this afternoon from Sage Cottage, our residence here in County Wicklow, for our virtual Sunday feast. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this afternoon I thought I'd speak to you about friendship in Krishna consciousness. Friendship in Krishna consciousness. Friendship is a natural part of being a soul. We are all spirit souls here in this material world. And friendship in this material world is natural because we are all essentially spiritual beings, and friendship is one of the original 12 relationships in the spiritual sky, in the spiritual world. Spiritual relationships are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam and other Vedic literatures in great detail. The Srimad Bhagavatam is known as the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic literatures. The subject of spiritual relationships is also specifically enumerated and elaborated by Srila Rupa Goswami, who was the greatest spiritual genius of medieval India. He speaks about this in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the great ocean of the nectar of devotion. And also in this very nice book, this little book that Srila Prabhupada compiled in the middle of the 1970s, which is called The Nectar of Instruction, Sri Upadeshamrita. This tiny book is full of spiritual wisdom. There's only 11 verses, 11 lessons, but they're all very powerful. And I thought today I would speak to you from lesson number 4 of the Sri Upadesh Amrita in the matter of friendship in Krishna consciousness. So as I said, friendship is a natural part of being a soul, because friendship is there in God, whom we call Krishna, the all-attractive Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna is known as Raso Vai Saha. Raso Vai Saha, which means that God, he is the source of all relishable rasas or relationships. So relationships in this material world are a reflection of spiritual relationships or rasas. Srila Prabhupada described this very nicely in the Srimad Bhagavatam as Krishna is the fountainhead of all relationships, or the fountainhead of all rasas. It's a very descriptive metaphor, a fountainhead. If you've seen a fountain, you have the spigot on top, the water comes up, and then it flows down. But that top of the fountain, where the water comes from, the source of all the water, is known as the fountainhead. So Krishna is the fountainhead of all relationships, and all loving, flavoursome relationships originate from Krishna. In Sanskrit, this relationships word is known as rasa. So rasa is a great science, the rasa tattva. In essence, Srila Rupa Goswami describes that there are 5 main relationships out of 12. Shanta, Dasya, Shakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. And then there are 7 secondary relationships known as wonder, mercy, etc. Adbhuta, Daya, mercy, and even comedy or hasya. Krishna is the original comedian. Actually, Krishna has a great sense of humor. So the 5 main rasas, as I said, are adoration or neutrality, reverence, which is known as shanta. And then there is dasya or servitorship. Number 3, there is sakya or fraternity or friendship, which is the subject of today's talk. And then there is number 4, parental affection, vatsalya rasa. And then there is madhurya, which is sometimes known as shringara rasa, which means a conjugal relationship. So all of these relationships are based on love. Love. And love entails 3 things: the lover, the object of love, and the process of loving. And in the original Sanskrit, these things are described as bhakta, bhakti, and bhagavan. The lover is the bhakta, the process of loving is known as bhakti, and the object of love, Sri Krishna, is known as Bhagavan. So as I said, this is Rasa Tattva. It's a big subject, way beyond my scope and beyond the scope of today's class. But in essence, we're going to talk about relationships. And the question may be asked, do we actually need relationships? Maybe you can just survive very nicely on your own. Some people think that I don't need any relationships. But there was one metaphysical poet of the 15th century, John Donne, who spoke a very concise aphorism. He said in one of his meditations that no man is an island entire of itself. In other words, we are not self-sufficient. The point is that we need relationships to be complete, to be a whole person. And one of the most important relationships is friendship. I remember on a long haul flight somewhere, there was a movie showing, and it was Tom Hanks who played a man who was shipwrecked on an island, and he was there for many years. And it was an interesting study in human nature. He was completely on his own, and he developed, the only friend that he had was Wilson, who was actually a football, because he saw this football wash up on the beach, and it was a Wilson brand football. Because he was so starved for relationships, the only friend that he had was Wilson, the football, and he would talk to the football, and he would reveal his mind to the football, and he would confide in Wilson. And I think, if I recall, Wilson one day washed away when the tide came up, and he was very distraught. So we need someone to confide in, to share affectionate relationships. And if we don't have someone, we have to create something, even a football. Some people have cats and dogs and pets in order to have that relationship, a friendly relationship. The problem, however, in this material world, the problem with relationships is that they have a beginning and an end. They're based on this body. We have a material body. The other person has a material body. If we want to develop a relationship with another person, there's going to be some interruption. We're going to die. We're going to lose interest. They're going to lose interest in us. We're going to separate. And so generally, material relationships early on or after a long period of time, they come to an end. There's disillusionment, disappointment. And sometimes people give up on relationships entirely out of frustration. So the question may be asked, can there be such a thing as a spiritual relationship? Are there relationships in spiritual life? And those who aspire for perfection in spiritual life, do they require relationships? Sometimes people misunderstand that spiritual life, they think that spiritual life is the opposite of material life. And so they conclude, and this subject is touched on in the Bhagavad Gita, that because they have become frustrated and bitter and disappointed in relationships in this material world, they therefore think that in spiritual life there should be no relationships. They conclude that spiritual life is the opposite of material life. In material life, I suffer due to relationships. Therefore, in spiritual life, no more relationships. This idea shows an insufficient understanding of what spiritual life actually is. These people are mistakenly thinking that I'll give up relationships altogether, even in spiritual life. And this philosophy leads to a frustrated understanding of spiritual life. And the goal of these persons is known as voidism. This philosophy is known as sunyavad. My life has been full of pain and suffering, so I want to attain a spiritual reality where there's no more pain and suffering, therefore give up all relationships. Sometimes people talk about the void. I just want to go and merge with the void. Life is so terrible, so therefore they attain or they aspire for the void. But in actual fact, Srila Prabhupada took pains to point out that there is no such thing as the void. There is no void anywhere in creation. So can there be such a thing as a spiritual relationship? And the answer is yes. The reason is because God is a person. If we understand that God is a person and that we are people, we are individual souls, so God is a person, the devotee is a person, we can have a personal relationship with Krishna, and we can have a personal relationship with other persons that are having a personal relationship with Krishna. We can have personal relationships with devotees of Krishna. So in the process of bhakti, in the bhakti life, spiritual relationships are important. They are nourishing. And Srila Rupa Goswami talks about this in the Sri Upadeshamrita, and specifically in verse 4. This affectionate relationship is known as priti. Priti in Sanskrit. P-R-I-T-I. So that's the subject of today's lesson. So let's read this beautiful Sanskrit verse, which is verse number 4 of the Sri Upadeshamrita. Dadati pratigrinnati guhyam makyati prichchati bhunkte bhojayate chaiva shadvidham pritilakshanam. Shadvidham means 6 types. So there are 6 types of loving relationships that one can share with the devotees. I'll give you the word for word meanings. Dadati means giving a gift or giving in charity. Pratigrinnati means receiving a gift in return. Guhyam means confidential topics. Akyati explains. Prichchati inquires. Bhunkte eats. Bhojayate feeds. Cha also, eva certainly, shadvidham 6 kinds of. Priti lakshanam. Priti means love, and lakshana means the symptoms. So what are the symptoms of sharing of loving relationships? What are these 6 loving exchanges, in other words? They are translated as follows by Srila Prabhupada. Offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad, and offering prasad. These are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee to another. Shadvidham pratilakshanam. 6 types of loving exchanges. 6 very practical ways of sharing love between friends in Krishna consciousness. So they're listed, as I said, as follows. Offering gifts to our spiritual friends. This is called dadati. And then those spiritual friends offer us a gift in return, and we accept it. That is called pratigrinnati. Revealing one's mind to our dear friend. That's number 3. And number 4, inquiring from our friend about confidential matters of spiritual life. Sharing of inquiry and revelation is called Guyamaketi Prichati. And number 5, honouring prasadam, in other words, accepting prasadam, delicious vegetarian food offered to Krishna, receiving that from others, from our spiritual friends, and giving prasadam to others. Bhunkte bhojayate. And that is 5 and 6. Receiving prasadam and feeding others with prasadam. So these are the 6 ways that friends can have a relationship under the banner of Krishna consciousness. It's a give and take, as you noticed. You give gifts, you receive gifts. You share your mind with others, and you hear from your friends as they share their minds with you. You give prasadam and you receive prasadam. So these are 6 practical ways of having a loving relationship with friends. Guyam akyati prichtati. An experienced devotee explains, and an inexperienced devotee learns from him. This is called Guyam akyati prichtati. That's what's going on at this moment. I'm sitting down here at our virtual Sunday feast, and I'm speaking on this subject, and you're hearing. So that is Guyam akyati prichtati. And then we have distribution of prasadam, just like, of course, this is a virtual Sunday feast, so there are no cooks working hard downstairs in the kitchen, ready to bring up the Sunday feast in half an hour, and everyone's looking at their watch waiting for when the Sunday feast is going to be served. Alas, alack, this is a virtual Sunday feast, so there will only be virtual prasadam, and it's not, of course, not quite the same. But in the temple, or in your home, if your home can be a temple, when the Prabhupada writes, when a devotee distributes prasad, remnants of food offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in order to maintain our spirit of devotional service, we must accept this prasadam as the Lord's grace received through the pure devotees. We should also invite pure devotees to our home or to our temple, offer them prasadam, and be prepared to please them in all respects. This is called Bhunkte bhojayate chaiva. So in the temples, the devotees spend all day cooking, or if you have devotees coming to your home, you're cooking all morning, and then they come, they arrive for lunch, you sit them down, you find out what their favorite prasadam is, what they don't like to eat, or what they do like to eat, and you cook accordingly, and you serve it with love. When you go to a cultured gentleman, ladies and gentlemen's home, in India, for instance, the hosts will sit you down and they will feed you to your full satisfaction, and they won't be eating until you're completely satisfied. You are the center of their affection, and they feed you very nicely. So, and this is a very practical way of sharing love in Krishna consciousness between those who have a friendly relationship. Prabhupada continues to explain in his purport to this verse that even in ordinary social activities, these 6 kinds of dealings between 2 loving friends are absolutely necessary. He gives an example in a very practical way that even in material life these things are going on. So if you think that spiritual life is the opposite of material life, then you've missed the point. Because these things are going on in material life, they can also go on in spiritual life. They can become spiritualized activities. So there's no contradiction. Even in ordinary social activities, Prabhupada says that these 6 kinds of dealings between 2 loving friends are absolutely necessary. For instance, he gives a practical example. When one businessman wishes to contact another businessman, he arranges a feast in a hotel, and over the feast he openly expresses what he wishes to do. He then inquires from his business friend how he should act, and sometimes presents are exchanged. Thus, whenever there is a dealing of priti, or love in intimate dealings, these 6 activities are executed, unquote. This reminds me of something that I read not too long ago that happened around 1969 when Srila Prabhupada, my spiritual master, was negotiating with a huge Japanese printing company called Dai Nippon, a huge printing house in Tokyo. He was negotiating to publish the Krishna book. And he went to Tokyo and he went and visited the printing house with all these top business executives from Dai Nippon. And he was negotiating for the best possible price to publish the Krishna book, the very famous Krishna book. So he met with these executives and he discussed his plans and his financial requirements, as one does. And he inquired from them confidentially. And he also fed them prasadam. He arranged for the devotees to make pakoras. He discovered that these men were very, very fond of pakoras because it reminded them perhaps of tempura. So cauliflower pakoras and potato pakoras and all sorts of pumpkin pakoras, crispy hot pakoras, and it went down very well. These gentlemen ate a lot of pakoras. So Prabhupada was expert. He exhibited the qualities of an expert negotiator, an expert businessman, and he was also very affectionate to them. These gentlemen were, some of them were younger, some of them were older, but Prabhupada was older than all of them. So he was like the father figure, and he was very firm in his business acumen, and he impressed them, and he got what he needed. He got them to print the Krishna book for a very cheap price, and he convinced them to print these very expensive Krishna books on credit with a very disproportionately small deposit. So Prabhupada was expert. And he did all this with love and affection, and he was displaying some of these qualities that he's just described in the purport. Someone might say, well, this is just business, but this is actually spiritual business because Prabhupada was negotiating, publishing spiritual books. And these are the principles that are given by Rupa Goswami in his Upadeshamrita. So it's a very practical business, engaging in loving exchanges on a day-to-day basis. So one of the most important things about spiritual friendship, and this, because this is verse number 4, in verse number 2 and verse number 3 of the Upadeshamrita, it describes 6 things which are favorable to advance in spiritual life and 6 things that you should avoid if you want to advance in spiritual life. And in both of those categories of 6, it mentions association. You should choose your association very carefully. You should choose to associate with people who are of a high spiritual caliber, and you should avoid people who are going to drag you down into material consciousness. Just like I'm speaking to you all today, you're all great souls, and I'm missing all your association very much because it's not quite the same having a virtual sadhu sangha. But Prabhupada established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness to facilitate all these loving exchanges between devotees in real life, in real time. And if we come together with other like-minded souls, we prosper and we nourish our spiritual life. Prabhupada writes in his purport to today's lesson that this society was started single-handedly, but because people are coming forward and dealing with the give and take policy, as outlined here, the society is now expanding all over the world. We're glad that people are donating very liberally to the development of the society's activities, and people are also eagerly accepting whatever humble contribution we're giving them in the shape of books and magazines, dealing strictly with the subject matter of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada writes, we sometimes hold Hare Krishna festivals and invite life members and friends to participate in the feasting by accepting prasad. Although most of our members come from the higher rungs of society, they nonetheless come and take whatever little prasadam we choose or we are able to offer them. Sometimes the members and supporters inquire very confidentially about the methods of performing devotional service, and we try to explain this. In this way, our society is successfully spreading all over the world, and the intelligentsia of all countries is gradually appreciating our Krishna conscious activities. And then Prabhupada writes, the life of the Krishna conscious society is nourished by these 6 types of loving exchanges among the members. Therefore, people must be given a chance to associate with the devotees of ISKCON, because simply by reciprocating in the 6 ways mentioned above, an ordinary man can fully revive his dormant Krishna consciousness. So what does this mean, dormant Krishna consciousness? Prabhupada mentions elsewhere that Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition on the mind. In other words, it is something natural. It is not something coming from outside. He explains that Krishna consciousness is an innate, it is innate in every living entity. Innate means it's already dwelling there. It doesn't have to be brought from somewhere else. It's already there within the heart. And it is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunai Shravanadi Suddha Chitte Karaya Uday. That pure love for Krishna, Krishna consciousness, is eternally established in the heart of the living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, that love naturally awakens. So Prabhupada is explaining that by engaging in these 6 loving exchanges, our dormant Krishna consciousness can be reawakened, can be revived. It's already there. It just has to be woken up. The example that Prabhupada gives an example of polishing, just like if you've ever found, just like some time ago I found an old silver goblet that was sitting in the bottom of the drawer, sterling silver, but it was in the drawer, it had been there for so long that it was all, you know what a tarnished silver item looks like. It's grey and grey black, and it's not shining. So I got some silver polish, and I polished and polished and polished, and then rinsed it, and then got a little bit of soapy water and washed off all the polish, and then rubbed, and that dark, gloomy looking silver item has become shiny. And the example, therefore, is that the silver is compared to the soul, and the tarnish on the silver is compared to forgetfulness. All of those things which cover the soul. So Krishna consciousness is like polishing the silver goblet. Polishing is reviving our original dormant Krishna consciousness. So what is the process of polishing? Prabhupada explains that since Krishna consciousness is inherent in every living entity, everyone should be given a chance to hear about Krishna. Hearing and chanting, Shravanam Kirtanam. This is the polishing process, the cleansing process. Prabhupada said, therefore, we have opened up so many temples and so many branches where people can come, sit down, chant Hare Krishna, bow down before the deity, dance and sing, hear a little bit of philosophy, and eat spiritual food or honor prasadam. And this is all part of the hearing and chanting process. Then one's heart becomes fully purified and one's original Krishna consciousness is revived. This is described by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshastakam. Chetoda paramajanam bhava mahadavagni nivarpanam shreya kairava chandrika vitaranang vidyavadu jivanam anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam punamrita swadanam sarvatma snapanam parang vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. That all glories to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditioned life of repeated birth and death. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. So in the Krishna consciousness movement, we're following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all of us, in the spirit of mercifulness. We want to share these loving relationships with others. Not that we're keeping it all for ourselves. The Krishna consciousness movement is an outreach movement. It's meant for sharing this affectionate spiritual relationships with the whole world. Just like devotees, they go out and they distribute books on the street and they chant and dance on the street because there's many lonely people out there. All the lonely people, where do they all come from? Well, there's a lot of them, and especially at the moment, there's a lot of people who are very depressed and very sad and feeling very hopeless about the world. So when eventually we can get back out there and chant and dance and distribute Krishna consciousness in the form of books and invitations to the temple, I think we will find there are many people who are hungry for it. Prabhupada says that contributing or distributing the holy name of the Lord is an example, a sublime example of contributing or giving charity. He expands on this principle. You remember the 6 principles? Giving and receiving, giving gifts or giving charity and receiving something in return, dadati pratigrinati, Rupa Goswami's first 2 of the 6 principles that we're discussing today. He says that going out and chanting on the street, giving people literature, and then people stop and we give them a piece of literature. They say, what are you doing? Here's an invitation to the temple, come and find out. This is all dadati and pratigrinati. This serves those principles very well. Prabhupada also explains in his purport that to this verse that this doesn't only apply to human beings. You can distribute Krishna consciousness to animals and trees, insects, birds as well. Just like recently in the garden, we've got a slug problem, and I get up early in the morning before sunrise, and that's pretty early these days. So I'm out there at 3:30, sometimes 4 o'clock, with my torch, collecting slugs. They're chowing down on all my nice seedlings and my pea shoots and everything that they like to eat. So it's an uphill battle. I collect, sometimes 5, 10, 15, 20 slugs and put them in a jar. But dear Lalita, my wife, she's already in the bottom of the jar. She's got some prasadam flowers and a little squirting of maha water and little bits of lettuce or vegetable that's been offered to Krishna, and it's in the bottom of the jar. We put the slugs in there, close the lid. We come back later after sunrise and take the slugs away on a little walk down the road into the bushes. And of course they've been enjoying prasadam in the meantime. So even the slugs, this is slug love, even the slugs can benefit. We can chant Hare Krishna, and the trees and the birds, they can all take part in the Sankirtan movement. Prabhupada says that in his purport here, not only is the chanter of the Maha Mantra purified, but the heart of anyone who happens to hear the transcendental vibration of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is also cleansed. Even the souls embodied in lower animals, insects, trees, and other species of life also become purified and prepared to become fully Krishna conscious simply by hearing this transcendental vibration. When I open up the jar and I'm just about to escort the slugs out to their new home, I chant inside the jar for them, Hare Krishna. And presumably they've got little slug ears and they hear the Maha Mantra. This was explained by Haridas Thakur when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inquired from him how living entities lower than human beings can be delivered from material bondage. Haridas Thakur said that the chanting of the holy names is so powerful that even if one chants in the remotest part of the jungle, the trees and the animals will advance in Krishna consciousness simply by hearing this vibration. This was actually proved by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself when he passed through the forests of Jarikanda. At that time, the tigers, the snakes, the deers and other animals abandoned their natural animosity and began chanting and dancing in Sankirtan. Of course, we can't imitate the activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but we should follow in his footsteps. We are not so powerful to enchant the lower animals, such as tigers, snakes, cats, or dogs, or entice them to dance. But by chanting the holy name of the Lord, we can actually convert many people throughout the world to Krishna consciousness. If the members of human society want actual peace, tranquility, and friendly relations between men and between nations, they must follow the Krishna conscious system of religion by which they can develop their dormant love for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As soon as people do so, their minds will immediately be filled with peace and tranquility. So giving Krishna consciousness to others is the pinnacle of this gift-giving principle. This is the real peace formula. So finally, I'd like to share an interesting fact with you, and that is that even God himself has personal friends. Here's an excerpt from the Krishna book. Once, the Lord desired to go early in the morning with all his cowherd boyfriends to the forest, where they were to assemble together and take lunch. As soon as he got up from bed, he blew his buffalo horn bugle and called all his friends together. Keeping the calves before them, they started for the forest in a great procession. In this way, Lord Krishna assembled thousands of his boyfriends. They were all equipped with a stick, a flute, and a horn, as well as a lunch bag, and each of them was taking care of thousands of calves. This is a transcendental picnic. Everybody loves picnics. You can join Krishna in his eternal picnic. All the boys appeared very jolly and happy in that excursion. Each and every one of them, including Krishna, was attentive to his personal calves as he herded them in the different places in the forest. The boys were fully decorated with various kinds of gold and ornaments. Yet out of sporting propensities, they began to pick up flowers and twigs, leaves, peacock feathers, and red clay from different places in the forest, and further decorate themselves in different ways. While passing through the forest, one boy stole another boy's lunch package and passed it to a third. That used to happen to me at school. I remember when I was in primary school, people used to come and grab my lunchbox and run away with it. This is a perverted reflection of what Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends do. When the boy whose lunch package was stolen came to know of it, he tried to take it back, but the boy who had it threw it to another boy. This sporting playing went on amongst the boys as childhood pastimes. When Lord Krishna went ahead to a distant place in order to see some specific scenery, the boys behind him ran to try to catch up and be the first to touch him. So there was a great competition. One would say, "I will go there and touch Krishna." And another would say, "Oh, you can't do that. I'll touch Krishna first." Some of them played on their flutes or vibrated bugles made of buffalo horn. Some of them gladly followed the peacocks and imitated the onomatopoeic sounds of the cuckoo. While the birds were flying in the sky, the boys, ran after the birds' shadows along the ground and tried to follow their exact courses. Some of them went to the monkeys and silently sat down by them, and some of them imitated the dancing of the peacocks. Some of them caught monkeys by the tail and played with them, and when the monkeys jumped into a tree, the boys followed. When a monkey showed his face and teeth, a boy imitated and showed his teeth to the monkey. Some of the boys played with the frogs on the bank of the Jamuna, and when out of fear the frogs jumped into the water, the boys immediately dove in after them. And when the boys came out of the water and saw their own shadows, they would stand imitating, making caricatures and laughing. They would also go to an empty well and make loud sounds, and when the echo came back, they would call it ill names and laugh. So, a wonderful description of Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends. Here's another very nice description of Krishna with another dear friend, Arjuna. Krishna and Arjuna shared this transcendental relationship of Shakya Rasa, or friendship. Arjuna just agreed to allow Krishna to drive his chariot on the battlefield, the great battlefield of Kurukshetra. Here's a nice description from the Nectar of Devotion. There is a nice example of the friendship between Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. When the fighting was going on, Ashvatthama, the son of Dronacharya, unceremoniously attacked Krishna, although, according to the prevailing rules of chivalry, one's chariot driver should never be attacked by the enemy. So Krishna was taking the menial role of a chariot driver, even though he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he loved Arjuna so much as a friend that he took on this role. Ashvatthama behaved heinously in so many ways, and he did not hesitate to attack Krishna's body, although Krishna was acting only as a charioteer for Arjuna. When Arjuna saw that Ashvatthama was releasing various kinds of arrows to hurt Krishna, he immediately stood in front of Krishna and intercepted all of the arrows. Now that's friendship. At that time, although Arjuna was being harmed by those powerful arrows, he felt an ecstatic love for Krishna, and the arrows appeared to him like showers of flowers. So that's a graphic example of friendship in Krishna consciousness. So one last thing, and that is that Krishna himself, we read about all these wonderful pastimes of Krishna with his friends. Krishna actually wants us to become his friend. It's not an exclusive club. It's not that we can just read about it and we're not allowed in. It actually is open for everyone. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, in fact 5:9, that he is the well-wishing friend of all of us. Bhoktaram jagya tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantim richati suhridam sarvabhutanam. He is everyone's friend. He's the well-wishing friend and benefactor of all living entities. And if we accept him as our friend, we will attain peace and happiness. Peace and from all the pangs of material miseries. So Krishna is our eternal well-wishing friend. And we should make friends with Krishna. So summing up, today we read how to share friendly, loving spiritual relationships as follows. Number 1, offering gifts to our spiritual friends, and this is called dadati. Accepting from those spiritual friends whatever they may offer in return, that is called pratigrinati. Number 2. Number 3, opening our minds to our dear friends and inquiring from our friends about the confidential matters of our spiritual life. This sharing of inquiry and revelation is called Guyam Akyati Prichtati. That's number 4. Number 5, honoring prasadam. That's something we all like to do. Accepting prasadam and eating spiritual food. Tamal Krishna Maharaj wrote an invitation for the opening of the London Temple in 1969, if I'm not mistaken. And he wrote on the advertisement that come and eat prasadam. And Prabhupada said, no, don't write that on the invitation. He said, you should write honor prasadam. He said, prasadam is not eaten, it is honored or respected. So honoring prasadam, that means taking food that is being prepared out of love and devotion, offered to Krishna, and then given to us by the hands of the devotees. Prabhupada himself in the early days would personally serve prasadam. He would cook and he would pick up the pots and walk down the rows where the devotees were sitting, and he would serve the prasadam with his own hands and give the devotees as much prasadam as they liked with so much affection. Devotees would be sitting down, they'd see Prabhupada's soft lotus feet, walk past, and he was enjoying, so like anything, as he was serving prasadam. Please take more, take more, take more. So accepting prasadam and giving prasadam to others. Bhukte bhojayate. So these are the 6 loving exchanges that we can share with friends. So Krishna has sent us a friend request in the Bhagavad Gita. We should accept his friend request and take up the process of Krishna consciousness seriously and attain perfection. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please note them down and in the comments section, and I'll try to answer them. So thank you. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.